But the essence has been and continues to be social control, because they, even though they argue that you don't have free will, that you don't have a soul, they have to act in reality as if you do. So they have to afflict your free will because they don't control you. Vimeo, unfortunately, doesn't have transcript for what we're about to show you. So we're just kind of diving into the clip in the dark, as Al Pacino said in Scent of a Woman, I believe it was. This is an interview I shot in DC. It's an unpublished interview, as are many of my interviews that I shot and just didn't have time to edit because I kept shooting interviews. This is Jeff Steinberg, one of the co-authors of Dope Inc., Britain's Opium War on the World. And the argument in Dope Inc. is that Kissinger Associates inherited the East India Company's narco-terrorism empire. I'm not making that claim, but what I'm seeking from Jeff is there was a specific part where I was incredulous, and he was telling me about the origins of the Bilderberg Group. And since we were just talking with Hervoye about the Bilderberg Group and international relations, I want you to hear it in, like, not secondhand from me, about the origins of the Bilderberg Group, and maybe an international banking family that was not just instrumental in creating a country, but a couple years after they made that country, they made a global engineering group to dominate, kind of a global dominance type of strategy. So this is raw footage. This is not edited footage. So Colby, jump into it like 30 seconds in, because I think we were still arranging microphones, but then he starts talking. And we'll play a couple minutes of this, and we can make it available to Grand Theft World members. You can see the whole thing, but I'm not going to publish it publicly because it's supposed to be part of a movie that I haven't also finished because I've been busy. I get lots of stuff done, but not always everything gets done right away. This is Jeff Steinberg, interview taken with John Massaria and Nick Kiecki in DC 2016, I believe it was. Let's go to the tape. They're competing against each other. The German Empire, the Russian Empire, the British Empire, they're all interrelated. They're all being funded by the same central banking ideas, these international bankers. Let's talk about the East India Company's penchant for opium, and maybe something like David Sassoon, the opium magnate from Iraq back in the day, and they were known as the Rothschilds of Iraq.
Right.
This use of opium, this illicit drug trade, and how it ties into the banking and transforms over years to even this day.
Well, look, within this system of empire, there's always a sort of a internal tension. And so let's just take the history of the British Empire. You've had commercial interests associated with the City of London, with the big trading companies, and then you've had the monarchy per se. And there have been long periods of time where, quite frankly, through too many generations of inbreeding, you had idiots on the, British throne. But then there have been other periods where you've had, occasions where the monarchy has reasserted and has been the dominant force. Well, beginning basically at the time of Shakespeare, when the initial royal charter was given to the British East India Company, that group of merchants, a lot of it, sort of modeled on already the existing Dutch East India Company, set up a massive military shipping operation that extended all the way to the Far East.
So the idea of geopolitics and empire is essentially social control, which is something that has been worked on for thousands of years by various rulers and various empires. They've laid it down for other rulers to emulate. And then you've got people like Machiavelli along the way who write handbooks for people who might enjoy power on a different level. But the essence has been and continues to be social control, because they, even though they argue that you don't have free will, that you don't have a soul, they have to act in reality as if you do. So they have to afflict your free will because they don't control you. They have to make all these attempts to improve their abilities of social control. You know why? Because they don't control you until you acquiesce your intellectual self-defense in many cases. So recurring theme, it's going to continue to recur because it's the main driving force in the world we live in today. And it's the historical narrative that pulls all these other sections together in the most credible way that I've seen thus far to date. But I'm free to change my mind as new evidence arrives. What do you guys think?
Yeah, man. Well, first, I think we need to put together a coalition to get all of your unreleased interviews out in the public.
Right?
But
There should be a club.
yeah,
I have
exactly.
been working on my Rothschild book series, though.
That's awesome, dude. That's so cool. That's going to be revolutionary for sure. You know, and so so on my list is definitely the Dope Ink book because that just ties everything together so much. You know what
It's
I mean?
so good. I have two versions of it, bro.
Yeah, I haven't unpacked that whole thing, but it's like it's the same thing where it's like even in modern day, you know, it's the CIA funded through heroin opium trade. It's just so crazy. And the other thing that really just like something I've always said is that like it's so we've probably the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest movement forward in the history of the world for human freedom is the American Second Amendment. The creation of that has created this check and balance throughout the whole world where they can't just do their old tactic of, as he said, taking over militarily. You know, they just can't do it. And as long as America has the First Amendment, there's more guns than people here. They have to use these subversive tactics because, you know, they want to roll out this world government plan, as Herboye was pointing out, and we talk about all the time. But they can't do that all over the world, yet having America over here being all free. So they have to have this subversive strategy to take America down a few notches. And so
We are the only country that has been so uppity against authority that we're like, we'll give people the Second Amendment. You imagine how crazy that is for some guys who just created their own country to be like, let's give everyone the same rights we have.
yeah,
It's like unprecedented in human history that anything like, I don't remember anyone back in Sparta being like, hey, y'all are on the same level and we're all together. I don't think that, I think it was an idea they might have had at some point, but they never enacted. Not the way they did in 1776 through 1789. Like there was a lot of changes in those
Yep.
first 13 years.
yep.
A lot
And
of
that's why
presidents too.
exactly. That's why we have to just hold on to that with everything we got, because the only reason why there's any degree of freedom anywhere in the world is because of the American Second Amendment, I believe. So it's just like it's just so crazy because they have to use other tactics because they can't just steamroll us.
Do you
Question.
guys think?
Here- Pop quiz question real quick. Who, after the Declaration of Independence in 1776, who was the first president?
Damn.
After George Washington?
Before George Washington.
Oh,
George Lazenby. Oh, sorry. Thinking of a wrong series.
No, but he's a one-time Bond movie person from 1968.
You got it.
George Lazenby. Samuel Huntington. I remember because he's a co-author with Zbigniew Brzezinski on one of these Anglo-American, William Yandell Elliott type of trained books. So there's a book. Where's it at? Is it the New World Order book? Yeah, I think it's Sean Stone's book. It's all about William Yandell Elliott. So he's a Rhodes Scholar who trained a whole bunch of other Rhodes Scholars and Brzezinski and Kissinger for the Rockefeller family. So once you find like this one luminary of their agenda, then you just find like who trained under that guy. And then it's like, oh, the movers and shakers of 20th century history. So that's why Sean Stone's book, New World Order, A Strategy of Imperialism, is illustrative of geopolitics and empire. See, we got a recurring theme tonight. Maybe it's not robophobia, but the drones are a thing, and so are the algorithms, and so are the humanoid robots, and all the other things they're cranking out while you're not looking. It's not going to be just Alexa. They're going to give Alexa a body and legs and the strength of 10 human beings. It'll have a real polite voice, though, as it oppresses you.
It'll gaslight the crap out of you.
And then ring you up with a bill. That's what they're going to do.
Do you guys think that the current fentanyl crisis is like a reverse opium war, or is it like a continuation? Because it seems like it's a similar modus operandi, just different families getting rich.
One could look at it as China getting back
yeah, that's what
at
I was gonna
America.
say.
However, America didn't give you a century of humiliation. And the people that did might have taken control of China and still hate America, so use China as a proxy to erode our foundations and getting people into situations where people who have never done fentanyl before come into contact with it and die from it. Like never having even purposefully introduced it into their life. And because the amount of fentanyl is so minuscule that could have that type of capacity, it's like a lethal unknown lurking that doesn't need to be there. But it was Kissinger and Mao, because those secret projects, David Rockefeller said in the New York Times, Tales from a China Traveler, 1978, that like he was very proud. Mao was one of their best experiments. And Zbigniew Brzezinski, who worked for David Rockefeller and also co-founded the Trilateral Commission, also said very high speaking things about Pol Pot, who had the killing fields in Cambodia, where if you had a pair of eyeglasses, you were the intellectual to be killed. So some of their projects really racked up the demo side count in the 20th century. And I think that needs to be weighed on the scale when considering their ideas otherwise.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about fentanyl, like having worked in that field, like there are a lot of people who that's their primary drug of choice is fentanyl. Like there's this misconception that like if you get one little drop of fentanyl in your weed, then you're gonna die, which there's some truth to that, like or in your cocaine, and that happens a lot. But it's interesting because, you know, a lot of people get hooked on opiates because they get when I was a lot of my clients, the majority of the heroin addicts started off like breaking their leg, getting a prescription, and they would get addicted to the prescription. They would try to get off the prescription. Then they start buying Oxycontin on the street. That it's $80 a pill. And so that gets too expensive. So they revert to heroin, which is a less expensive way to achieve the same desired effect. And then fentanyl comes around, and fentanyl is an even cheaper way to get a more concentrated dose to achieve the same effect. So now people are playing with fire where they're actually using fentanyl as their primary, like injecting it as their primary drug of choice because they're that far down the rabbit hole. And I had lots of clients where that was their, that's what they would seek out was fentanyl. Like, that blew my mind because I was under the propaganda that, oh, if you inhale one speck of it, you're going to die. It's like, no, these people are actually looking for it and injecting it straight up, dude. It's crazy out there. And I'm so glad I got clean before the whole fentanyl situation. Like, I didn't have any experience with that, but it's like, it's carnage out there. Literally just carnage.
Well, it's cruel and unusual to have it introduced in your society in a warlike fashion without your government putting up a defense mechanism for it, but in fact, cooperating with those cartels, which is historically the storyline from this book right here. So this is the first edition copy. The book that drove Kissinger crazy. And it was this book in the early 80s that drove Saturday Night Live with John Lovitz to make fun of Lyndon LaRouche, the intellectual luminary for these ideas, in a way that made Queen Elizabeth into a global drug dealer and Prince Charles into like who John Lovitz played as like the bumbling idiot who delivers the drugs all over the place. So it was a caricature of an idea that is actually true, but through the caricature, they're telling you you'd be stupid to believe this. And that's how they can intellectually undermine a large audience. So this book in its original version, as you see, I have many pages that I thought were very important because the red pages are more important than the yellow tabs. And you see there's just a couple yellow tabs and it's mostly red tabs in that book. And then there's a second updated version, Dope Inc., with a more direct subtitle, Britain's Opium War Against the World. So it's not just us. Like, so don't take it personally. They're doing it everywhere. They've been doing it. They did it openly in their society. Like the British Empire was openly doing this. And everyone on the island of England's cool with it. They're like, oh, it's just China over there getting addicted, right? It wasn't like their kid's football coach from down the street who had a knee problem and now is an addict at the corner expressway begging for change or stealing or breaking into people's houses to get the $80 a pill type stuff, right? Those types of addictions, it's like fifth generational warfare. It's war on a scale that you don't realize you're at war and dealing with those type of consequences. Just to say, it's kind of like how they do the excitotoxins in the food. When you make an artificial food taste better than the real food, what do you think is going to happen? You think sales go up? Yeah, maybe. You think stock price goes up? Yeah, maybe. You think you're getting people to like things that aren't natural? Is that part of your agenda for eugenics? Yeah, probably. Because these people think that nature is not a creation of intelligence, but something to be manipulated for their own ends. And that goes back to Richard Wurmbrand's book, Marx and Satan, because that's what he's talking about right before he got to the social eugenic utopia part of what's his name? Moses Hess, father of utopian socialism. So basically, here it's chapter 7. Marx was Satan's chosen tool to make man lose his self-esteem, his conviction that he comes from high places and is meant to return to them. According to Marx, man is primarily a belly which has to be filled and refilled constantly. The prevailing interests of man are economic in nature. He produces in order to satisfy his needs. For this purpose, he enters into social relationships with others, and in an attempt of social control, you have to afflict those relationships. In The Descent of Man, another masterstroke which makes men forget their divine origin and divine purpose, Darwin said that man springs from the animal world. Man was dethroned by these two. Satan could not dethrone God, so he devalued man. Man was shown to be the progeny of animals and were a mere servant to his intestines. In this strange coincidence that the 19th century gave to the world three leading personalities opposed to Christianity, all bearing the name of Charles. Karl, German for Charles, Marx, Charles Darwin, and the French poet Charles Baudelaire. The latter wrote Abel and Cain. So that's where we picked up on the next page of Moses Hess. So just in case you're interested in reading a book like this, and I haven't thought about this book in probably, I don't know, 20 years since I bought it, but the topic of Richard Wurmbrand, which hopefully the AI transcript gets accurately so you could search it. And the Clip Genie has been very popular tonight and might be mentioned again. We'll see.
I think to Hervoyer's point that he was talking about bricks in the last segment.
Yeah.
And it kind of seems like, you know, despite all these different kinds of wars that they're setting up, that part of this at least seems like the hollowing out and sort of controlled demolition of the Western economic structure, the end of Bretton Woods, so that the next stage can be introduced, which could be everything from like the blockchain-based UBI thing with, you know, if you vote the wrong way or say the wrong thing, sorry, we got to freeze your bank account kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, like Scott was saying, the only thing that stands in their way, that's the softest kind of force, right? Or the like coercive tactics that the government can use where they're like, we're still not actually like touching you. And in the States, it's like, well, if everyone's armed, they're just not going to stand for that. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, we have a bankster taking over in Canada who has been one of the architects of freezing people's bank accounts, taking away people's firearms, and taking away people's free speech. And he wants to unify with Britain and the United States. And you can imagine like whose system is going to maintain the priority if those mergers are to happen, right? That's the thing. I would rather Canada take on more American rights granting, you know what I mean? Get a First and Second Amendment here than for the States to take on Britain or Canada's structure of government where they chuck the First and Second Amendment out the window and say it's for your own protection.
Mm. Yeah, that's how you know that this whole narrative of like us going and invading other countries around the world to give them our freedom, right? Who cares? In the grand scheme of things, who cares if Iraq has freedom? We want Canada to have freedom. Like, let's invade Canada.
Look, if Canada wants freedom, we laid out the playbook. You write a letter to the king and you say, we would like these rights. And he gives them to you. Oh, wait, that's not how it went down, is it? Oh, okay.
Because he's another one of those Charleses. It's all the Charleses you have to worry about.
You guys are like, how do we have a Second Amendment revolution if we don't have a Second Amendment in the first place? Once upon a time, farmers had tools. Right? Hunters had tools, like they were just tools. So there's different tools being developed today. I think the communication tools, the media tools are like the new cannons on the battlefield, right? If you have a launch interview from like Tucker Carlson or Alex Jones, it's like Big Bertha from World War I. Oh, that shit went off over there and I just heard it. It was 30 miles away. I heard it, right? When they had the rail cannons back in World War I, like these giant things that could lob projectiles like dozens of miles, those are like mainstream media influencer platforms today. And one side was totally armed. The New World Order side, the globalist side, they had a lockdown, but then they wanted us all to have surveillance technology in our pocket. And we were like, hey, we can make YouTube uploads with this. And
it's
so,
like
yeah,
V for Vendetta.
There's an arms race. Yeah.
You centralize all of the media into one thing so you can wield it all at the same time. And that single fulcrum point becomes your biggest weakness because if it gets subverted, boom, you just got the wrong message out to the whole group of people.
Sir, you told me to connect it to all the systems. Get me in the control room. Yeah, it's a great movie. I really thought things were going to change after that. I was like, everyone will get it now.
Yeah, that and Loose Change came out in the same year. I was like, well, we don't have to do any work anymore. The revolution is certain.
Yeah,
And then you
we
came
got
out with
there right at
Project
the end. It's
Constellation.
over now. Yeah, I mean, then we just discovered like, oh, it's going to be a long haul.
Yeah, that's
People
what
aren't going to get it so fast.
Tease was saying. I can't remember if it was on this show or not. It might have just been him and I talking, where he was saying his movie Blindfold about the girl that makes the presentation in her classroom about her elementary school classroom about how 9/11 might have been a false flag, inside job, and the whole town freaks out. He was telling me when he was producing that movie or he was writing it, he was like, all this 9/11 truth was coming out. He's like, oh my God, I got to hurry up and put this out because in a few weeks it's going to be passe and hacky.
Yeah, everyone will know
You're talking about
about it.
9/11 truth. Everyone's going to know by then. And so, like, and here we are. No.
World Trade Center 7 didn't kill itself.
Yeah.
It didn't Epstein itself. I'm sorry. That's what I meant.
It didn't Virginia Guffrey itself.
Oh, Virginia Giuffre. That's another person that, like, I heard it first from Burmis years and years and years ago before anyone was even talking Epstein. Like, he was on that. Just like he was on, like the first conversation I remember with Burmis was I went to visit those guys in upstate New York. So they had just made, like, Loose Change. And they were probably on Loose Change 3 by that point. And they're living like college kids roommate like situation. Like, so, you know, we went in and we were in Dylan's room and he's showing us. So he had this whole like organizer for his mini DV tapes. So he had all these tapes. I was like, oh, this dude he's got a camera. It's like $5,000. He's got all these tapes. I had like a mini DV camera, but it used the same type of tape, right? So I was like, I'm getting there. And then he's like scrubbing through footage. He's like, check this out. And Burmis was sitting on the bed and he's like, you know what I can't get over? Goddamn Pope's a baby rapist. And I was like, what? I was like, that's an interesting non sequitur or whatever. And then I knew a little bit about it, but he was like, yeah, dude, the whole sexual Vatican thing. And he just went on. And I was like, it's interesting. So I went home and did some more research. I was like, oh, yeah, current Pope Ratzinger. What was he? He was in charge of covering out the pedos or whatever it was back then. Long sordid history. And then I went back and researched, like, there was a pirate. Let me take you to the history blueprint, because once upon a time I put these things in here. There was a pirate who became Pope. So if I type in Pope, let's go. We have to crawl back in time, right? Because there's a line of popes, and I thought I had them one in front of the other. All right, so let's jump out. Let's jump back out. Once upon a time, there was a Barbary pirate, slave trader type dude. He built up a bunch of wealth, and then he bought himself the seat of the Pope. And then right after that, the Medici family, the controlling ruling family of like Venetian black nobility cats over there that people like Dope Inc. will tell you about. They said, we would like our guy to be Pope. And so the Medicis bought 2 Pope seats, Julius and Clement II. One of those 2 popes, there are some sordid pieces of history where they would paint little naked boys with gold paint and have them pose like cherubs on the dining tables and stuff until they like died of exhaustion or what. Whole bunch of child abuse nonsense that was going on amongst a group of people who claim to represent the good Lord. So
Sounds like the Podestas.
Literally. Yeah, that the Podesta artwork with the decapitated statue looking thing. Jeez.
Someday Madeleine McCann's murder will be solved. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah.
The sketches. Just look at the police sketches and get back to me on that. All right. So I'm sure they were never there. They don't have the ability to travel places without going through customs. They just don't have that type of power or influence or access to Epstein type jets. They don't. So it's impossible for them to have been involved with a little girl's disappearance from a resort in Spain. It's just coincidence, nothing more.
Yep, nothing to see.
How's that reading the transcript? Does it look like, yeah, it looks good. All right, so coming up next is a not so happy story, but we will go to a happy story, uplifting story after this one because we need to pace it. Freedom's a super marathon. We got to refresh ourselves every so often. This is not the point of refreshment. This is a point of disgust and a story that my wife said, hey, did you listen to such and such talk about the clip? And I said, no, I hadn't seen it. And I've seen a lot of stories like that, and I'm probably not going to be too surprised. But then I started listening to the story, and I was like, we got to play this clip into the record, because there's been some things going on in the past couple of years that are being done in our name with the tax dollars that we contribute from our hard work. That is then, it's not taken without our consent, because we do have a responsibility in playing that game. But we only play that game for fear of being incarcerated in a prison, like the Count of Monte Cristo. So I think that we all get why we pay taxes and play that game.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man.